On behalf of the President of the World Jewish Congress, Ronald Lauder, and all Jewish communities worldwide, I thank you all for coming here today. We have more than, he said 60, so I need to update you. We have more than 80 organizations who united to organize this rally in support of Israel. We have people here from many countries, as was mentioned, and many more. But what's not less important, the parallel rally is going now on the social media, and I just was updated that hundreds of thousands of people participate in this. And this is not a only Jewish event. It's important to understand. We have many Christians and others who joined us here today out of conviction. Thank you very much for coming. Let me tell you, it is not a common sight these days in Europe to see so many Israeli flags in one place in the center of Geneva. And I'm glad that so many of you come here today to show your colors. The reason why we are here today is to tell the United Nations that it needs to change. It needs to overcome its obsession with Israel. This obsession is destructive, and it stands in the way of an effective human rights policy that is so badly needed. Today, whenever Israel has to make use of its legitimate right to defend its existence against thousands of rockets fired into territories, when it tries to destroy the terrorist infrastructure of Hamas and other groups in Gaza, it is immediately accused of committing war crimes by the United Nations. Dear friends, after the Holocaust, the World Jewish Congress played a central role in the establishment of the UN and in drafting its charter. Article 51 of this charter says, and I quote, "Nothing in the present charter shall impair the inherent right of individual or collective self-defense if an armed attack occurs against a member of the United Nations." Clearly, by firing hundreds of rockets at Israeli civilians, Hamas and its allies launched an armed attack against a member state of the United Nations. And Israel was in its right to respond. It is Hamas that is a violator of human rights. It violates the sanctity of schools, of mosques, of hospitals. It uses civilians as human shields. And it executes people publicly without giving them a fair trial. As retired British Army Commander Richard Kemp, that will be speaking after me, wrote in the New York Times last week, the reason so many civilians died in Gaza last summer was not Israeli tactics or policy. It was Hamas strategy. And Israel did not go into Gaza because it wanted to expand its territory. Israel had to go into Gaza to defend its citizens. As you all know, Israel troops and settlers left the Gaza Strip 10 years ago. But today, Gaza is still an occupied territory. But the occupier is not Israel. It is a terrorist movement called Hamas. And if it were not the brutal Hamas regime, Gaza would be thriving today. Yet many in the United Nations continue to blame Israel for everything that goes wrong in the area. That's because blaming Israel for every war has become a sport, not just in the United Nations, but here especially. The Human Rights Council has been in existence for only 8 years, but has dealt with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict more extensively than with any other subject. So far, Council issued more one-sided condemnations of Israel, 61, than of all other countries in the world taken together. Certainly, Israel is not perfect, and its army and its leaders make mistakes, and these need to be investigated. But Israel has independent courts. Israel investigates itself. Israel does intensive soul-searching after each military action. Israel holds its leaders to account. Are you aware of similar action in many other places in the Middle East? Did you hear that the Palestinian Authority, or Hamas, or Hezbollah, or Assad, or ISIS, or many others in the Middle East have their actions questioned by an investigative committee? Everybody knows the answer. No. That's why we are here today to tell the United Nations Human Rights Council, stop applying double standards toward Israel. It's unfair. Stop portraying Israel as a serial violator of human rights. It's wrong. Stop putting the democratic state of Israel on the same level as the terror regime of Hamas. It's an insult. Israel has a decent human rights track record, certainly the best in the Middle East. But that's beside the point, of course. Some members of this council don't care about human rights. What they care about is pointing fingers at Israel to deflect attention from their own disturbing human rights record back home. In 2006, when this Human Rights Council was established, then Secretary General of the United Nations Kofi Annan called it, I quote, a historic development. He said it will help improve the lives of millions of people worldwide. Well, that's how it should have been. But that's not how it has worked out. Dear friends, the Human Rights Council and its obsession with Israel has to stop. Not just because the reputation of the United Nations as world's leading body to enforce human rights is at stake, but also because so many people need the United Nations to focus on their plight as well. The people in Syria, the people in Iraq, the people in Somalia, the people in Pakistan. While we are here, let's not forget this. While the Council is again meeting today to discuss matters relating to Israel and to the Palestinians, more people across the Middle East are becoming refugees. Women are raped, and innocent people are beheaded. Human rights violations of the worst kind are happening in the UN's Human Rights Council is again blaming Israel. This council has an important mandate to fulfill, but it can't do so by applying different standards to different countries. The same standards must apply to everyone, and the most important challenges must get to the top priority. The UN must be fair, and the UN must be just towards all of its members. If it isn't, it will not be effective. And effective it must be, for the sake of millions of people around the world. Of course, as I said, Israel is not perfect. It can improve many things, including on human rights. It needs to deal with criticism, and so it does. But Israel cannot and will not tolerate to be everybody's punching bag. And we will not and cannot tolerate this either. Thank you very much for coming today.